Do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
I'm a Muslim, so everyone's
All right. There could be some fruit.
It's not the
This is Numbers chapter 28. It says, each day present 2 unblemished lambs as a regular burnt offering. Offer 1 lamb in the morning and the other lamb at twilight. It's a regular burnt offering established at Mount Sinai for a pleasing aroma, fire offering to the Lord. All, you should say ball.
It hasn't gone in yet. It hasn't gone in yet.
Swish.
It's still not going in. Field goal. It's stuck in the air.
You're stuck in the time-space continuum.
Probably.
All
The
right.
ball just hasn't gone in yet.
This next one's from Leviticus. Again, I think Leviticus has a bad reputation because people think they roll their eyes and I don't want to think you're talking about that. So there's a lot of good stuff in Leviticus. When you reap the harvest of your land, you are not to reap to the very edge of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not strip your vineyard bare and gather its fallen grapes. Leave them for the poor and the resident alien. Some of y'all need to work on your monkey impressions.
Bronson, can you show us how to do a proper monkey again?
It wasn't on video before.
Alright.
Was the GoPro on for that? Yeah, good.
Yes, it was.
Alright. This one is also from Leviticus. It says, you are not to eat anything with blood in it. You are not to practice divination or witchcraft. You are not to cut off the hair at the sides of your head or to mar the edge of your beard. You are not to make gashes on your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourselves. I am the Lord. At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how to cancel debt. Every creditor is to cancel what he has lent his neighbor. He is not to collect anything from his neighbor or brother because the Lord's release of debts has been proclaimed. You may collect something from a foreigner, but you must forgive whatever your brother owes you. No, what do you think? So this one is about forgiving debt. The summary of it is at the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. Like, if someone owes you money, they go 7 years.
Just saying.
But on 3, tell me what you think it is. 1, 2, 3.
Do it.
All right, little disagreement. So, someone tell me why they're snapping. Who snapped? Raise your hand. Who snapped?
I was right this time.
Okay, someone tell me why you snapped.
This time.
Adriel.
So I'm always at least half right.
Very strategic.
Nailed it.
Caleb.
Because it said to cancel out the debt because God's forgiven debt, and so it's like it's helping your neighbor, but at the same time, it's also like honoring God.
Okay. If you did monkey, why did you do that?
Additionally, here, a lot about loving, obviously you're loving God, but keeping His command, but that's every one of these. I feel like it's more focused around loving others.
I think generally this is directed at loving your neighbor.
Yes. I was sure you were happy. Say something else.
This one is similar. If there is a poor person among you, one of your brothers within any of your city gates in the land the Lord your God has given you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your poor brother. Instead, you're to open your hand to him and freely loan him whatever need he has. That deserves practice. Every morning I look myself in the mirror and I tell myself, this one's from Leviticus 2.
Aren't you lucky?
Not chapter 2, also. Leviticus also. Suppose one of you sins against your associate and is unfaithful to the Lord. Suppose you cheat in a deal involving a security deposit, or you steal or commit fraud, or you find lost property and lie about it, or you lie or swearing to tell the truth, or you commit any other such sin. If you have sinned in any of these ways, you are guilty. You must give back whatever you stole, or the money you took by extortion, or the security deposit, or the lost property you found. Alright. These are the last couple. Here we the last four. Do you guys remember this? Do you still need this on the screen?
Yeah.
You do need it on the screen? I'm gonna put this verse up there because it's a little bit longer. So you guys can just read along with it. When you enter the land the Lord your God has given you, do not imitate the detestable customs of those nations. No one among you is to sacrifice the son or daughter in the fire, practice divination, tell fortunes, interpret omens, practice sorcery, cast spells, consult medieval spiritists, or inquire of the dead. Everyone who does these acts is detestable to the Lord, for the Lord your God is driving out the nations before you because of these detestable acts. Yeah, that's the end of that. I saw we'll do two things.
I see the argument.
Why did someone do the 3-point shot for love God?
There were like bits and pieces you could take from that where it was like loving others, but mainly loving God. And following his commands.
Yeah. Big minutes.
Read actually snapping.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it said stuff about like how you can't do not murder your son or daughter or fire, so I kind of had to be my stuff.
Aren't you glad your parents didn't do that? I think that was a good Thanos snap. I think it was a mixture of both. I snapped.
I respect your opinion.
Alright. Here's the last couple. We'll run through them. When you build a new house, alright. When you build a new house, you must build a railing around the edge of its flat roof. That way you will not be considered guilty of murder if someone falls off the roof. I don't know. I thought it was Did anyone else have something different than that? I'll read from the screen. Do not plant your vineyard with two types of seed, otherwise the entire harvest, both the crop you plant and the produce of the vineyard will be defiled.
I don't know. Read it again.
You can read it.
You could argue.
What could be like?
I think this is correct. No one can go wrong.
We're going to go to the next one. We're going to go to the next one. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together.
That's loving the ox and the donkey.
Well, then yeah, they live in their shed.
Here's one that you better not do, or else. Do not wear clothes made of both wool and linen.
I don't even know.
Someone pulled this on me as in a debate to like say that the Bible is stupid. I didn't know what to say.
No, have you said?
Yeah, actually.
Like,
You guys can sit there. Good job. You guys did a really good job.
Someone might ask his dad and get back on him. I never got back on him. Yeah.
So, some of those were clear cut, do not murder. It's pretty straightforward. God is commanding us to love others. Some of those are harder, like this, do not wear clothes made of wool and linen. And you know what? I don't have like a neat argument or explanation for all of the Old Testament commands. And I don't. Even like people who study the Bible for a living, as in like professors and like it's their job to understand and know the Bible, don't understand everything there is to know about the Old Testament. And that's mostly because it's an ancient document. Like, you can read a book and know what it means because you have an understanding of the context of the book. Like, if you pick up and read a book about a Chinese family from the 1700s, like, you don't understand their context. You don't understand what is rude, what their neighbors might consider rude or offensive, or what their religion teaches necessarily. Like, there's all these factors where we don't have all the answers, and so that's why some of these are complicated. That's why wearing wool and linen sounds weird to us, because basically every one of our clothes are a composite of different fabrics. Like, if you look on your tag later, it probably says, polyester, cotton, and wool. Yeah, wool if you're wearing winter clothing. And so some of these laws are just sort of hard to explain, but some of them are actually because the Old Testament, part of God's plan for his people was that they would be a separate people, separate than all the other nations. He did not want them to worship God, quote unquote God, like the other nations. And so sometimes nations would do things like, this is speculation, but this particularly is speculated that surrounding religions would do this as an act of worship to their God. And so God is saying, I do not want you to do this because I want you to be separate from them. I want you to have a devotion that is to the Lord only. I don't want you worshiping false gods and practicing false worship by doing what they're doing. And so that's why some of them, that's speculation, but I think it's a good speculation. I think it's the best we can do, although it's pretty reasonable, all things considered. Anyway, so that's where things get carried. But all of the Old Testament is love God and love others. And there are some laws that are hard as well about slavery. This time is not about talking about slavery, but it's worth talking about, and it's I think worth noting that when the Bible talks about slavery, it's not talking about slavery that was in America. Like, the American slavery experience was not necessarily the Hebrew slave experience. The American slave experience was terribly degrading, and slave owners just did not have respect generally for human life. They viewed them as tools, and that is not the Hebrew version of slavery. Slaves had rights. There was laws about how you needed to treat a slave. And there was laws even about how to help people get out of slavery. And so it was sort of like that 7-year debt forgiveness. There was laws like that for people to get out of slavery. And the reason that those laws were in place is because people would sometimes intentionally sell themselves as slaves because they did not have like a job. Like, they didn't have a skill that they could use where they lived. So they'd be like, hey, can I sell myself to you basically as a house slave for the next 7 years? And that was a thing that people did in ancient times. And that's something unfathomable to us today. But, slavery is one of those things. So people can say, what about that in the Old Testament? Okay, like, it's one of the, people use that as like a gotcha. But when people think about slavery in the Old Testament, they think it's slavery like it was in the 1800s. That's just not the case. It's really, and if someone pulls that on you, you really should just challenge them to actually read it, what it says about it, rather than just sort of hearsay, which is what most people have. Another comment is just that God's model for government for Israel is not necessarily what he models, what he wills for us. Like, those laws a lot of those don't apply to us. What, in the New Testament, what we see is there's sort of an unofficial, like, division of the law. Like, the 10 Commandments, all of the 10 Commandments except for one, which is the Sabbath command, is restated in the New Testament. They come back around and say, yes, these are still things that are, imperative in our life. We should still live by this. And those are like the social laws. But the laws about how to worship and sacrifice and things like that, Jesus did away with because he was the final sacrifice. And there's a lot of parts of the Old Testament law that are passing away with Jesus. And so that's why we can say, yes, that was true in the Old Testament, but God fulfilled his plan with the Messiah, giving the final sacrifice, the true Israel, the new Adam, all these different types that Jesus fulfills and renders, it makes a lot of what the Old Testament commands not useful for us today. Useful at some point, but not for us today in terms of daily living. One thing that I was sort of holding out on that some of you guys were grumbling about, particularly Ethan, is that it's true that all of those, in one sense, are loving God and others. Because if God tells you not to murder, and you don't murder, you are loving that person. Like, if I do not kill you, Karma, I am loving you, but I'm also, how would I be loving God in that way? Because I did what he said. Like, if your parent tells you, hey, don't treat your brother like that, and you don't treat your brother like that, you're obeying your parents and loving your brother. So some of them are directed at God exclusively. Some of them are directed at people, your actions, but it always comes back around, even with other people, back to God. So let's, I think we're going to sing. Can we sing one more song? Sorry, I didn't really keep much of a transition here. During this next time, and here, I'll continue this one. All right. So I have put you guys in groups. I'll sort of talk about this for just a after this, we're going to have bathroom break, and then we're going to group up into the groups that I tell you. Kate and Amber are going to be group leaders, and Kate and Amber's group is Dakota, Alex, Caleb, little Caleb, Adrell, Joshua, and Matthew. Second middle school group is Ryan and Sarah, and that's going to be Karma, Franklin, Aiden, Aaron, and Josiah. So, what middle school 1 group, if you're in Amber and Kate's group, raise your hand. Okay. And then if you're in Ryan and Sarah's group, raise your hand. Okay, good. We're on the same track. And then the rest of you will be with Eddie and Darlene. They're a high school group. They're just taking high schoolers. And the instructions are pretty clear in here. You will need at least 1 or 2 pens. You will need a couple Bibles. You're gonna be digging around. And feel free to use, a phone. Feel free if your leader has Wi-Fi or cell phone reception, ask them to Google something. Search your Bible app. You don't have to just use the Bible in front of you, but just get creative, and we'll read. I'll give a few more instructions after.
All right, stand up.